Hello, it is the witching hour, and you are listening to Exe Files Paranormal Radio on Phonic FM 106.8 in Exeter and Phonic FM online. Hello, wireless listeners. I am your host, Alison Rockbrand, and I'm here with my special guest co-host, Jonathan Dymond. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello.
Jonathan is going to read us a poem in a few minutes, but I'd like to also mention our special guest this evening, Paul Green. He's going to be on talking about his new publication, Babalon and Other Plays, published by esoteric publisher Scarlet Imprint. And that is a book of his very interesting play, Babalon, which I actually directed in London in 2005, and a couple of other plays as well. So he's going to be on talking about that. Richard, unfortunately, is on vacation. That's why we have a special guest co-host, which I mentioned last week. So thank you very much, Jonathan, for coming in.
All right.
Jonathan is a local pagan here in Exeter, and he was on the show a couple of weeks ago talking about his very interesting visit to a Viking village. And you spent 6 weeks in a Viking village and doing some...
In Sweden.
Yeah, in Sweden, doing some forging, metalworking?
Kind of reenactment stuff. They have people come and learn about vaguely how the Vikings live.
Yeah, fascinating.
Forge work. They have some long boats that take people out rowing and sailing, and
really interesting. Yeah. Do you mind actually just swinging the door shut of the studio there? Because we're in the basement of a place called the Phoenix here in Exeter, and there's these raves that constantly go on Friday night. So that's a little bit better. Okay, so give us your poem.
Okay, so this is a personal favourite of mine. This is a poem by the late great John Keats. One of these kind of cautionary tales of don't go wandering off with fairies you meet in the woods. So this is called La Belle Dame Sans Merci. Well, my French is non-existent, but I think that's how you say. So. Oh, what could ail thee, knight-at-arms, alone and palely loitering, though sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing? Oh, what can ail thee, knight-at-arms, so haggard and so woe-begone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest is done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguished moist and fevered dew, and on thy cheeks a fading road fast withereth too. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her step was light, and her eyes were so wild. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant so. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and little else, so all day long, for she would sideways bend and sing her fairy's song. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild, and manna dew, and sure in language strange she cried, I love thee true. She took me to her elfin grot, and there she slept, or sightful saw, and there I shut her wide wild eyes with kisses four. And there she lulled me asleep, and there I dreamt, O woe betide, the strangest dream I ever dreamt on the cold hillside. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were all. They cry, La Belle Dame Sans Merci hath thee in thrall. I saw their starved lips in the gloom, with horrid warning gaping wide, and I awoke and found me here on a cold hillside. And this is why I wander here, alone and palely loitering, though sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing.
Thank you.
This seems to be a kind of recurring theme, and I don't know if it's just sort of Northern European culture, or whether other cultures have similar theme of kind of falling between worlds, of sort of meeting someone in sort of fairy mythology. It tends to be you meet someone, you meet the fairies. Generally, if you meet something in their realm, seems to be the thing not to do.
Well, as we were saying a couple of weeks ago on this program, you're not supposed to drink the food, drink the water, drink the wine, eat the food in the fairyland. And also, you were telling us a couple of weeks ago about your own strange experience in the woods.
I kind of had my own sort of encounter with the fairies, as it were, in Sweden, wandering along. It's the first time I've ever had kind of actual sort of physical contact and sort of really got the sense of them being really there, which seems to be a thing over there that kind of the fairy folk never really learnt to hide in Scandinavia because they've never really had to. But I was wandering along this path through the woods at night and stumbled over a root and put out my hand, kind of catch myself as I fell, and a hand reached out and took mine in the darkness and kind of was sort of gesturing to sort of follow on off into the woods. And
very creepy.
I'm gonna stay here in the world of humans.
Well,
I think.
I don't know what would have happened to you, but I am glad you are here as the special guest co-host for this week and for next week. So I don't know what would have happened to you if you had gone, but I'm very glad, for my own sake, that you didn't go.
Traditionally, you tend to kind of reappear in 100 years or so.
Might be something to be said for that, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a viable method of time travel.
Okay,
anyway.
let's have some words from our special guest, Paul Green. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Alison, and hello, Jonathan. I think it would be a wonderful thing to be carried away by the fairies. I've been sort of trying to seek it all my life, but they always seem to be sort of round the next corner. It's a great pleasure to be here on the Tower of Power in the midnight hour, as I used to say in my DJ days. And where do you want to start?
Well, why don't you tell us about your recent publication in your book with Scarlet Imprint?
Right. Babalon and Other Plays consists of 11 plays written over about a 30-year period. Some of them have been broadcast on radio. One of them was very memorably produced by yourself with great skill and dedication and no money. And they cover superficially, they seem to be very different in some ways, but they all attack the same kind of questions, the same kind of psychic zones. They all try to investigate those liminal areas, I suppose, that Jonathan was talking about a moment ago, those strange sort of zones of consciousness that sometimes open up to us in poetry, particularly in surrealism, in certain kinds of art and film, and of course in ritual theatre. So what I'll do, if you like, is I'll just sort of zip through the plays, sort of picking out some of the recurrent themes, and
please.
And then maybe we'll talk a bit about Babalon. Right. The first play, which was broadcast on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in 1972, is superficially it appears to be science fictional. It's called The Dream Laboratory, and it really deals with attempts to manipulate the innate telepathic qualities that seem to be released through the dream state. And it was written at a time when I was very interested in surrealism, in parapsychology. I'd read a lot of William Burroughs and Marshall McLuhan, and it's really about how the control mechanisms of the state are trying to manipulate trying to manipulate people in the dream state. So you have a director at a research institution who's trying to manipulate the dreams of two dreamers, a man and a woman, and is trying to eliminate them because it views the dream as dangerous and subversive. The next piece is more overtly occult, and given your travels in Germany a few years ago, Alison, it might sort of reverberate a bit with you. It was written actually, to say a very dark place in my life sounds a bit melodramatic. You could say I just wrote it when I was pretty screwed up. It's called the Ritual of the Stifling Air, and it was broadcast on Radio 3 to my immense surprise. It would never happen now. And it's a necromantic ceremony to raise the spirit of the Führer.
Wow. Controversial, very controversial.
It was very controversial, and it was very... I have to be a little cautious about this because I wasn't there when the voice tracks were laid down by the actor, by the actors and actress. But the technicians and the producer swore to me that there were very peculiar vibes were produced, and the equipment started misbehaving, and there were curious noises in the foldback and so on. Now, as you know, sitting in front of a radio consoles sort of misbehave and do weird things all the time.
Oh yeah.
But they seemed very sort of convinced about it. So that was the Ritual of the Stifling Air, which was, I suppose, a kind of voyage into the realms of Karonzon and chaos, because what the female medium is sort of defies the Magus, and the Magus then takes over the channeling, and what you get is a sort of something a bit like Crowley's Karonzon, a complete outpouring of sort of chaos, of rant and chaos and blasphemy, and it's a very peculiar piece. I've kind of kept quiet about it because in some senses I think it could be appropriated, by people who really do want to raise the ghost of the Führer. But it's there. I wrote it. Everybody hated it except the guy in the Observer. But I felt it does have its own peculiar charm. Then, of course, we move on to Babalon, which is about the relationship between Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, Lafayette Ron Hubbard, and Cameron Parsons. Now, how much background do you want me to fill in on this for your listeners?
Well, you can fill in a bit. I think most people might not know about the story, the life story of Jack Parsons, or the Babalon working even.
Right. Jack Parsons was born in 1914, and he pioneered the rocket fuel technology that eventually culminated in the Apollo missions. He was a pioneer he was a self-taught chemist who managed to blag his way into the California Institute of Technology and then into the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in the late 30s and 1940s. But while he was doing that, he was also a member of the Pasadena branch of the Order of Oriental Templars, answering, of course, to the Master Theorian 666, Aleister Crowley, who was then sort of struggling to cope in wartime Britain. And Parsons became fascinated by magic and thelema. He threw open his house to a huge sort of commune of magicians and writers, science fiction writers, magicians, and one of the science fiction writers who turned up, who was Lafayette Ronald Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. Eventually, Hubbard, having experimented with Parsons in magic, decamped with Parsons' mistress and Parsons' money, and Parsons then became involved with an extraordinary woman called Marjorie Cameron, or Cameron as she styled herself, and he took part in a magical working using the Enochian magic of Dr. John Dee to invoke what he called the spirit of Babalon. And Babalon is certainly the belle dame sans merci, if you like, the very powerful, empowered female entity which he saw as the counterbalance to the Awas current that had been invoked by Aleister Crowley. So eventually Parsons and Cameron split for a while. Cameron later did have a child, a physical child. Parsons' career sort of became more and more problematic. He got into trouble with the FBI, who thought he was trying to sell, thought he was involved in espionage. Eventually he lost his security clearance, he lost his job. He made a final attempt to reunite with Cameron, and the idea was that they were going to go down to Mexico. And then in 1952 he mysteriously died in an explosion at his home. And there are many, many interpretations of this. You know, was it some force that Hubbard or others had set in motion? Was it a revenge attack by an LA cop, and because Parsons had appeared as an expert witness in a trial, as an explosives expert in a trial? Was it the FBI? Was it the CIA? These questions are open to speculation, and I've sort of drawn upon my own interpretation in the way the play evolves. So the Babalon working was an extraordinary magical experiment. If you actually go to a Scarlet Imprint website, there's a very interesting article on it by Peter Gray, who, along with Alkistis Dimish, is they're the founders of Scarlet Imprint. I have to say, when I wrote the play, I was originally inspired by reading a footnote in the 1970s, and the idea sort of germinated, but I didn't really have enough information to go on. And then with the arrival of the internet, I began to piece things together, but I was still speculating wildly. I mean, since then there have been 2 biographies of Parsons, one focusing on his magic, another focusing on his rocketry. But I didn't have those available, so my chronology is probably a bit speculative. And of course, when you write a play, as you know yourself, you compress, you play about with space and time. You have to be selective and leave things out. So I can't pretend that this is the last word in biographical accuracy about Parsons, but I think it captures some of the essence of what he was about as a libertarian prophet, as a pioneer in magic, as a pioneer in space technology. I think he was a remarkable man. I think he was in some ways flawed, as are we all. And I think his influence is going to become quite important in the way that Crowley's has.
Well, it's very interesting, and I think your play actually covers quite a lot of this biography, really. Your play covers the beginning of his association with, Caltech, the California...
That's right, yeah.
And his creation, basically invention of rocket fuel, and all the way up to his involvement with Crowley and the Agape Lodge, as you're saying, and then all the way up to his eventual demise. So, I mean, I think your play covers quite a lot of his biography, and of course you stylize, edit, obviously, when you're doing an artwork, but I think the one of the reasons why your play was so good was because it seemed to be a fairly accurate and,
well, it was sort of accurate. The reason why it was so good, Alison, this is going to be a terribly lovely thing to say, is because of your brilliant production and the work you did with the cast. So, I think I think that transformed it, because unfortunately there's just a little footnote to this. There was a producer at the BBC, a lovely guy called Ned Shire, who was very keen on it, and he did say, you need to rewrite it, Paul, because we can't afford that number of actors, so I rewrote it. And then it mysteriously got dropped, and I think they got nervous about the Scientology aspect of it.
Potentially. I mean, there's also magical rituals and stuff in the play, so...
Which were very powerful on the night when it was performed.
Yeah. Well, that was also another situation where doing those magical rituals in rehearsal, which we did them in rehearsal and we did them, correctly, because the cast was made up of people who were all magicians, and they were actors, but they were magicians as well. Local magicians in London, and people that I knew, and were known to Treadwell's, which is a bookshop in London where we rehearsed it, etc. So sort of London magical personalities were kind of involved in as actors. So when we did the rituals, we were really doing them, and definitely weird stuff happened. A whole series of strange events took place, and there's actually a blog about it. One of the actresses.
Oh, by Aline de Winter.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, Aline said that there were strange things happen throughout the rehearsal.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm not sure that the play actually caused the explosion of an oil refinery 3 days later.
No, but she does believe that it did. She believes that happened absolutely, and she said that to me several times. That after we had done, I think it was the final. Yeah, after we had done the final production, then a few days later, an oil refinery exploded outside London, and she attributed it to the production.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
I wouldn't go that far, but certainly weird things did happen.
Yeah.
There's no question of that.
Anyway, shall I move? Do you want to take an intermission here, or
yeah,
shall I move?
I would like to. I would like to play some of Babalon, and I'm going to play a little bit of Act 1, as I think you suggested, and I'm going to play maybe 7 or 8 minutes of it.
Terrific.
And then maybe towards the end, I thought I'd play a little bit of Act 2. It's actually really difficult to find what to play, because I actually find most of it's quite good. And as I said, it was a good play. Everyone thought it was a good play. That's one of the reasons why everyone was on board with it. All the actors and so on, they all really respected it as a play. And so it's quite difficult to choose. So I just decided we'll just play it, play the beginning. So we'll play that, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about that and some of Paul's other projects and so on.
Okay, that'd be great.
See you soon.
Ready for testing.
Jack, get back from the pit, behind the sandbags.
She's my shooting star. I want to watch her burn.
You're a one-man suicide squad, Jack.
Citizens of Pasadena, we salute the Golden Dawn. Illuminate the wastes of the Arroyo Seco all the way to Devil's Gate Dam.
Oh, for Christ's sake, give us the damn signal.
Give me the sign of the open eye, and the token erect of thorny thigh, and the word of madness and mystery. Yo Pan! Yo Pan! Yo Pan!
Oh, we didn't ask for the poetry reading.
Edward, my friend, that is the signal. Just fire her up.
Okay, you heard the man. Come on, light these things up. Okay, that's a good steady burn. For a Jack. Good. This could be the one.
Good. There you go.
Oh boy. So you think that thing bullets like 5 months worth of wheat?
Well, the work goes on, Ed. Remember when we started out in 36, the day the fuel hose ruptured? Mm-hmm. Remember all the burst chambers we had with the red fuming nitric acid?
I remember you as a kid on the 4th of July blowing great holes in my mom's backyard.
Then you know the old Faustian pact.
What do you mean?
If you're gonna learn the secrets of our sorcery, you have to live dangerously, right?
Well, where have the last 3 years led us? We were gonna fly rockets around the moon.
Well, we're now staff of the California Technical Institute Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Not bad when we haven't got a doctorate between us.
I noticed the guys with the doctorates don't do the dangerous stuff.
We're all in the Brotherhood of Rocketeers, Ed. You, me, Frank Molina, Dr. Von Carmen. And right now, we've got a new project.
Oh, yeah?
This lab will produce a reliable booster for rocket-assisted takeoff from aircraft carriers, from jungle airstrips, anywhere. If the Pacific becomes a major theater of war...
No, I doubt Roosevelt's gonna be so stupid.
Isn't it an American tradition to fight for freedom?
Oh, yeah, the rockets, red glare...
Absolutely. The current is flowing our way. We live in a new aeon. The Aeon of Horus.
Read too many strange books, Jack. What is the formula for this Aeon?
Force and fire, my man. Force and fire.
Alistair, are you coming?
Never with you, dear Frida. No carnal comings and goings. You are not a scarlet woman, alas. I came in the might of Pan with the ape, and the owl, and the serpent, and the camel, and many other delightful vessels of iniquity in the course of establishing the Lord of Thelema through venereal workings. But never with my dear Lady Frida, who...
Sometimes you are facetious and vulgar. Are you coming to the shelter?
Oi! Put out that light! Don't you know there's a war on?
Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
You frighten the poor man away.
Yeah, pox on his shelter, for the slaves are creeping things. Perhaps these bombers will incinerate all these litigating blowflies of tradespeople. Or my conniving usurious cow of a seaside landlady. Herr Goring, I invoke ye, send your air devils to 23 Ebden Drive, Torquay. Dive upon the bridge playing bitch with barrels blazing.
You made a similar request to Count Zeppelin, I believe, in 1915, to destroy your aunt's house in Croydon. It was unworthy of you, especially when you were in New York.
Mere propaganda, Frida. Deliberately grotesque, written only to provoke America into entering the war on our side. Ugh, would I could so now. But this is different. Those pig swine are plotting my financial ruin. They're obstructing the work of the new Aeon.
I settled your affairs in London as best I could. I've undertaken to pay the printing of our Book of Thoth.
Yes, your designs for the tarot are enchanting.
And still I see the table scattered with unpaid bills and nasty cryptic letters.
The needs of the Magus are subtle, sister.
Cigars, brandy, caviar, champagne.
Well, I am an English gentleman, Frida, even in this hog hovel.
And those other substances.
Cocaine aligns one to the 21st path of the Tree of Life. It is the bitter snow of the high peaks I tasted at crossing the abyss. As for the essence of the poppy, it goes well with a boiled egg for breakfast.
I'm no longer sponsoring your addictions, Alistair.
You are addicted to me, Frida. I have shown you the starlight, a vision and a voice that transcends your tiresome social round. I've nearly shown you the serpent's kiss. It is your true will to support the Thelemic work.
Yes, but haven't your transatlantic brothers and sisters supported you?
How many times have they let me down, Frida? Freighter Arcad in Vancouver, Freighter Saturnus in New York, and as for that poltroon Freighter 132.
Mr. Wilfred Smith was a charming man.
That poltroon Smith has been out in Pasadena for years, supposedly recruiting for the Agape Lodge and raising funds for my triumphant return to America. A dribble of pittance is all I see. And now, with this war...
They are trying, Alistair.
Apparently Smith's idea of a Gnostic mass is for his mistress to jump out of a coffin wearing her cami knickers. He'll turn my Order of Oriental Templars into a burlesque show.
He's trying to popularize your teachings, to raise money for you.
I had such high hopes of a new world. A rough but mighty beast. I still believe a starry void will open.
You would descend to the shelter.
A man of real intellect and vision must carry on the work. Meanwhile, I must go on a holy shikar.
A shikar?
The quest, Frida. My nightly hunt for a scarlet woman to perform the operation.
You can't go now, surely.
As a god goeth, so do I.
You can't leave me here.
Alice the Tub may be waiting for me by the Prince of Orange, or Mildred Church may be lurking by the Torrey Abbey sands. I am a wanderer of the waste. I care not. Do what thou wilt.
Love is the law, Alistair. Love is the law.
Phonic FM.
Hello and welcome back to Phonic FM. This is Exe Files Paranormal Radio on 106.8 in Exeter. I'm your host, Alison Rockbrand, and I'm here with my co-host, Jonathan Dymond. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello.
This is the Witching Hour, and we are here with our special guest, Paul Green, who's talking to us about his new publication, Babalon and Other Plays. Hello, Paul.
Test pit's full of smoke.
Sorry. No. Hello, Paul.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, hello, Alison. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Right. It was great to hear that Anthony Lewis's performance as Crowley there.
Yeah, I was just going to say who it actually was and what we were actually listening to, and so that was the first scene with Jack Parsons experimenting with some jet fuel, I believe, and then the next scene was Aleister Crowley and Lady Frida Harris in Hastings?
Well, actually, at that point, they were in Torquay.
In Torquay,
he didn't move to Hastings until 1945.
Okay.
February 1945. Yes, Crowley has been a bit of an obsession of mine. At one point, I was going to write a novel about him, but it was just unmanageable because the material was just too much. So I wrote the Parsons play, and then there are two other plays in the collection of 11 which have got where Crowley crops up. One of them is set in the 60s and 70s, and it's about the British jazz rock musician Graham Bond, who was a very talented organist and saxophonist and one of the pioneers of British rhythm and blues and jazz rock, who believed, inaccurately I think, although he might have been, he believed that he was Crowley's son. And he became obsessed with Thelema, but he interpreted it all at a very, very literal level. And I think if you mix magic with heroin, as he came to do, then the results are rather explosive. And Bond eventually committed suicide Finsbury Park tube station in 1974. He was an extraordinary, very charismatic man who I think could have done great things, but unfortunately I've tried to show how he couldn't find that sort of balancing point between his different demons or daimons or whatever. The other Crowley-based play, and Crowley appears here, we just hear his voice in Bond's mind, in Bond's head. But Crowley appears in very sort of dapper form in another play in the collection called Tell Me Strange Things. And this is based on another character, this time from somebody who was born in the 1880s and died in the late 1940s. An extraordinary man called Montague Summers. Have you come across?
Oh, of course, yes, of course, one of my favourites.
Yeah. Monty was an extraordinary character. He was a sort of high camp clergyman who tried to reinvent himself as a Roman Catholic priest on rather sort of dubious ordination grounds.
A very unusual man.
A very unusual man. He came to prominence through writing about the theatre and forming a society for the rediscovery of old 17th century plays. And he also wrote a series of books, bestsellers in some cases, on witchcraft and demonology, the vampire in Europe, the werewolf, his kith and kin. And these are extraordinary works because he furiously denounced any manifestations of witchcraft and the supernatural. At the same time, if one digs around into Summers' life, there's only one biography, but there are sort of other sources floating about. He did know Crowley, and the thesis of my play is that Crowley had an insight into the contradictions in Summers' behaviour, which I think to some extent were caused by his repressed homosexuality. And at the climax of the play, he is quite literally haunted by Crowley as he attempts to exorcise a female friend and neighbour. So it's I certainly have fun writing it. I mean, I have a certain personal interest in Summers because my father, who was outwardly a rather sort of conventional man, also had a collection of very strange books, including works by Summers, and actually corresponded with Summers when he was a young man. So there are 2 or 3 letters. They're not sort of amazing in themselves, which is just very interesting to have that connection there.
Oh, very interesting.
And yes, he didn't talk. I think my dad also wrote to Crowley when he was a young lad, but never got a reply. But, I don't think he enclosed a £5
Exactly.
note.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. So this Crowley connection does run through the plays. There's also the jazz connection arises as well in a story called a monologue, a dramatic monologue called The Mouthpiece. I don't know. Do either of you play the saxophone?
No.
No. Okay. Saxophonists are obsessed by their mouthpieces, just as guitarists are with their amps and violinists are with their Stradivari. Saxophonists are crazy about their mouthpieces, but this is a monologue by a jazz musician who used to be very famous and respected and then dropped out of sight, and he's being interviewed by some music journalist, and he tries to explain how his downfall was caused by meeting a mysterious girl in a music shop who suggested that he bought a certain rather old mouthpiece, and this mouthpiece has very strange properties when he plays, and eventually he thinks he's lost the mouthpiece after a very convulsive episode of a 60s happening, and then he rediscovers the mouthpiece and rediscovers the mysterious young woman in the opart dress, and unfortunately though it all ends badly. It's a cautionary tale for jazz musicians.
It reminds me a little bit of a Twilight Zone style episode.
It could be.
Sort of haunted objects.
Right. I produced it myself when I was in the days when I was teaching media at the college where I worked, and we managed to get onto Resonance FM, which was which I think suited it rather well. And so there are a number of pieces which again sort of overlap. There's one about a poet called The Terminal Poet, who is terminal in the sense that he is actually dying, although he doesn't know it at the beginning of the play. And it's also terminal because around him sort of language is entering a terminal phase, and he has certain gifts that he doesn't realize, certain telepathic and psychic gifts of morphic resonance, and he is being exploited by a special branch of the CIA that oversee the production of poetry, and they hope that they can use him he's a rather conventional poet, and they hope that they can use him in their battle against sort of manic rappers and subversive poets and so on. And that ends with language undergoing a very strange metamorphosis. I can't say that there are any works in here that actually, leave the audience dancing as they leave the theatre or switch off their radio. I'm quite fond of Astral FM, which is a disc jockey broadcasting on the astral plane, as it were, mingling together the voices of so many. I'm talking about disc jockeys in the 50s, 60s, 70s context, because I was one briefly in Canada many years ago. I was little brother Soul, the soul DJ, James Brown of the famous Flames. Get down, baby.
Sounds great.
It was, an echo chamber. I got away with it. And so Astral FM is a kind of, he's all these people, and they're all sort of speaking through him in a sort of strange mediumistic way. So Astral FM was fun to write. It is one of the lighter pieces. There's a parapsychology related one called The Voice Collection, which is about an elderly Irish lecturer living with his sister, and in a rather claustrophobic relationship, and he collects voices from the dead on his tape recorder, and there is one particular voice that he is desperate to capture, and he thinks he's caught her, but in the process he reveals his own complicity, inadvertent complicity in her death. And the play again ends on a question mark, because we can hear the voice as listeners, but his sister can't, and is trying to convince him that it's evanescent, that it's just a phantom of his auditory imagination. And that went out on Irish radio, which I was rather pleased about. Actually, I was able to draw on my sort of the Irish Catholic side of my family background, and I also knew somebody at RTE in Dublin who was a big man in a certain organisation, and I think that helped in getting it broadcast, because I normally they concentrate purely on native Irish writers.
Well, this book sounds really incredible. I'm really impressed. I didn't realize that you had quite this many strange, surreal, esoteric plays. It sounds it's really incredible. So I can't wait to get my copy, because
have you got one yet?
No. They were going to send one to me, and I didn't give them my address yet. So I'll get it in due time. But I'm really.
Well, if you don't get one, I'll stick one in the mail.
Yeah, thanks. But I'm sure they offered to send me one because
I'm sure
having directed.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah. I can't wait. And I think we really need to see some of these produced again, or some new productions.
There was an evening at Treadwell's a few weeks ago celebrating Jack Parsons' 101st birthday, and the play was talked about quite a bit. I gave Peter Gray gave a very good talk about the Babalon working. There was a very fine performance by Alkistis of Parsons' Book of Babalon. Clive Harper talked about actually meeting Marjorie Cameron, and somebody else, whose name escapes me, gave a very good presentation about Parsons as a sort of political libertarian. I don't mean libertarian like sort of mad Republican, but libertarian in
the other libertarian.
The other libertarian, yeah. And I gave a little chat about the play, and a number of people said, yes, you must do it again. And I said, well, it's just a question of getting the right people in the right place at the right time and the right amount of money. But hopefully this will arouse, a bit of interest. I have sent out the script to various places over the years, but to the more established theatres, but I've never even been dignified with a reply. So
why do you write specifically plays? Do you consider yourself to be a magician and esotericist? Is theatre the best way that you kind of express?
I think I'm not much of a joiner, so I've never been having been educated in a system where I've expected to join. Have you ever considered your vocation for the priesthood, Green? No, Father. Sorry. I'm not much of a joiner. I've used a lot of what you might call esoteric procedures in writing. I mean, my first novel, The Clip-Off, which is again a melding of science fiction and magic, I was using the tarot, I was using various divination systems, I was constantly looking up Crowley's 777 Book of Correspondences as the plot evolved. There have been moments in writing which have been sort of automatic. I don't want to make too much of this, I'm channeling,
Oh, really? Well, I didn't know that.
But occasionally, in some passages, you are writing on autopilot, and that's very exciting when it happens. I mean, I began as a poet, and yes, I have a poetry collection out called The Gestalt Bunker, published by Shearsman Books.
Yeah, I do have that one. Yeah, that's a very good book.
Oh, thank you. And I suppose working in that way is very, very intuitive. But I mean, I think, if there's one sort of entity, deity that I admire, identify with, it would probably be the Egyptian god of scribes, Thoth, because I think he's a pretty decent guy, you know. I mean, Jehovah causes, you know, plagues and drives people out of gardens for eating apples, whereas Thoth does sort of helpful things like teaching the Egyptians writing and mathematics and, you know, agriculture and, you know, generally sort of being the kind of diplomat of the gods. I quite like Thoth. But I'm not really, you know, I'm not a member of the OTO. I have done some experiments with chaos magic. I'm quite impressed by some of the stuff that Peter Carroll has written, and for a while I sort of took correspondence courses and experiments with his Arcanorium College, and that's the closest I've got to being a practitioner, but that was kind of online until then working individually. And sometimes these have produced interesting results, and sometimes they haven't.
Why do you find that drama specifically is a good medium for expressing these themes or memes?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I see myself as a writer who tries different forms and different genres. I think in writing sometimes you can develop a momentum where, you know, the characters, you know, writers will say this, not necessarily esoteric writers, but they'll say that, you know, the characters are telling me what to do. It's out of my hands. The characters are taking over. So I think, and also, of course, the very nature of ritual is dramatic.
Oh, that's true, definitely.
And, you know, as someone who's been, you know, heavily involved in ritual theatre, you know, are sort of sharply aware and probably better informed than I am. So, yeah, I think I think the illusion between, you know, the dramatic and the magical is sort of inevitable. I'm sorry, I'm waving my arms about here and you can't see it. It's you know, just trying to make a point here. Yeah, so, but still fiction, I wrote the clip-off in 2007. It came out with an obscure Canadian press. And more recently, Mog Morgan has done the first of two books which continue some of the characters and themes of the clip-off. There's one on Mandrake, on the Mandrake imprint called Beneath the Pleasure Zones. And throughout the books there's the same protagonist who deals with an increasingly sort of surreal and complex world as, you know, paranormal forces are released into it through his own sort of blunderings in Kabbalistic magic, where he manages to release the negative side of the Kabbalistic tree, the clipothic, you know, the random chaotic clipothic forces. So writing that was probably the most. I think writing the clip-off was probably, apart from Babalon, the clip-off was probably the most sort of concentrated, focused piece of writing. Although I did it over quite a long period, you know, because like most writers, I had a day job. So does that sort of resolve the question or complicate it?
Yes, well, I think it's just the beginning, really, and we've only got a couple of minutes left in the show. I feel like we've only covered just a very small tip of the iceberg, and so we'll have to have you back on the show sometime to talk more about these things and about your writing, because you're also a poet, and I'd like to talk to you more about your poetry as well, so and more of your novel writing and so on. So definitely have to have you as a repeat guest, I think. Well,
thank you very much, Alison. It will be a pleasure, and thank you too, Jonathan.
Oh, thank you.
I hope we meet ethereally on the ether.
Definitely.
We used to call it again.
And we're just going to listen to a few minutes from Act 2 of Babalon. Which I can't remember exactly where it starts now, but I did listen to it earlier. But it's quite good as well. And I just thought, I mean, I should mention also that this recording was actually recorded live on the night that we performed it at RADA. That's the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. in December in 2005. So it's actually a live recording, which is something I forget sometimes when I listen to it, because some parts of it, the quality is, I think it's quite good, and some other parts a little bit, maybe slightly more uneven in terms of the sound,
Yeah.
We should equalize it out someday, because we can probably fix it.
I have done some work. I did sort of try and EQ a bit of it, but a professional studio could probably
Yeah.
it up even.
No, I think it can definitely be. But, I just thought it would be interesting for us to hear from what part one was like, and so now this is after the intermission. This was part two. So thank you very much, Paul.
Well, thank you, Alison, and thank you, Jonathan. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks.
And thank you, wireless listeners. This has been Exe Files on Phonic FM 106.8 in Exeter, and online. We're just going to listen to the couple of minutes of part two of Babalon. Join us next week for special guest Angela Edwards, who's a London esoteric artist and performance artist. Until then, goodbye.
Farewell.
You still think you'll find Our Lady Babalon out here in the desert? You've hardly spoken in 4 days. You were in great danger, Jack. I could hear the demonic entity screaming for its freedom. You saw an alien entity sent by Smith to possess and destroy you.
It was an entity, a non-entity, in a crackling between being and not being. I don't know. I'm so tired.
You saw an alien entity sent by Smith to possess and destroy you. It paralyzed my arm, Jack.
Let go, Ron. Just let me go.
I'm
burnt out.
I'm your friend, your magical brother.
I am not being a non-entity.
Your energies have been under great strain. The Lodge, Helen, Smith, your noble release of Betty, and the Rockets. Never forget the Rockets and their secrets.
Never forget the Rockets.
And now your quest for Babalon.
The operation must not fail. All must be memorized. My concentration must not waver.
Sure. We'll buy one of those new audio recorders to log the record of the Aeon, to keep you focused.
So much is at stake.
And now it's vital for your own psychic safety that you're not distracted with worries. You need someone to take care of business, your investments, and make your inheritance work magically for you.
The purity of my concentration must not falter.
Hear me out, Jack. In the Navy, I discovered this great secret deal about yachts.
Vessels of wrath.
Did you know that with the right connections, you could buy a vessel on the Florida coast and then double your money selling it in California?
Purity of my concentration. It must not falter.
Oh, sure. I was just thinking of taking a trip east for a couple of days to check it out, to give you time and space. Betty could come along with me to sign anything on your behalf, to make sure everything's shipshape.
Whatever thy right hand findeth to do.
We could form a company, buccaneering boldly, in ships to the stars one day, riding the fire of your rockets, magic, and space-age technology.
I must go back to the lodge.
Now?
It is done. I know it. It is done.
Who
Who are you? What do you want?
I was summoned. I will see Jack Parsons.
Who sent you? Wilfred Smith?
On the road, I heard Jack's voice. I must see him. Love is the law.
So Frater Saturn has dispatched you to dislodge Jack.
I drove night and day from New York. I was called.
Oh, the New York brothers have been talking about initiating a redhead. You're Marjorie Cameron, the office girl.
I am not Marjorie, nor an office girl. I am an artist. I am Cameron. I am Ariel. I am Lilith.
You speak as Lady Babylon.
I'm the one you have been calling.
I've always known you. I have called you since my boyhood.
I will be your elemental.
You came for me. We will work together.
Love is the law.
I declare this woman, Cameron, to be the Scarlet Woman. Her will is the law in Agape Lodge.
You've been out in the desert for hours, Brother Jack. You haven't slept in days. Surely you should rest.
Well, look what's materialized on planet Earth. We did it for you, didn't we? Yeah, we did it in Brotherhood. Your angel cometh. What are you gonna tell Betty, huh?
Leave us. Just leave us be, all of you.
Okay. Take it easy, brother. I'll be on the East Coast for a couple of days.
Babylon will shine as the evening star in the bloody sunset of Götterdammerung. 666 will know her.
She has slant green eyes, this alien succubus. Air and fire. I've told him that the love of the Magus for such beings is insensate and may destroy him. I must intervene.